Okay, I wanted to start off today by doing a little bit of a review of what we have been doing this week. We have been practicing approaching a text set in order to write an informational essay. Informational essay is something we haven't done yet. In an informational essay, we are trying to explain something to somebody. Give them information. And the text set itself becomes our research. This is where we're going to get that information. Even if we have some background knowledge, we want to make sure that we include information from the text set. All right, so after we get the text set, the very first thing, who can remember what the very first thing you want to do? Very first thing you want to do when you're approaching a text set. Octavian, do you remember? What's the first thing you do?
You write little things in the white spaces.
Annotating. Okay, this is one step before doing the annotating. Do you remember? You turn to what? What do you turn to?
Writing prompt, like the thing with all the
Absolutely, that's exactly what it says. We turn to the writing prompt. And guys, I'm going to ask you to stop snapping your fingers at me. Okay, so you look to the writing prompt because the very first thing you want to do is you want to determine what they're asking you to do. If you read the text without a purpose, you really don't know what to pay attention to. You don't really know what is important. And in this unit, this reading unit, we've learned a couple of strategies, right? First is we're going to read with the lens. We're going to read with the lens. We actually put on glasses that are going to see and search for the information that we need. And we also know that we can use the text structure of the source, the article, in order to help us determine what is important. All right, these are things we learned throughout this unit, and this is our opportunity to put all of those pieces together. Okay, so when we looked at our writing prompt, we went right ahead and we wrote a thesis statement right on that page. All right, and we wrote it there because we wanted to make sure that we included some of the language that's in the prompt. We don't want to misinterpret the prompt. Okay, because if your focus is off and you're off task with your topic, then that's going to be less effective than if you are responding directly to the prompt. Okay, and so then the next step was what Octavian just told us. Then we're going to annotate the text. Now, here's another piece that we learned in our unit, that we read a section and we stop and we ask ourselves, what am I learning here? What is important here? What do I need to pay attention to? And we jot in the white space to annotate the text. Once we're done, we look at what we've written in the white space and we look for patterns. We look for information that is coming up across the text set. And yesterday during class, we spent some time working on trying to come up with main ideas that are aligned with the thesis statement. Okay? And we want to make sure they're aligned because their job is to support that thesis statement. Their job is to help us to stay, please put that book away. Their job is to help us to stay focused and to support, with main ideas, support that thesis statement. And you notice that we kind of see a repetition of the wording. survive, 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 survive. Okay? Because that's our focus. We noticed in source 3, they talk about a lot of kind of communication in birds. But we don't really need to explain how birds talk to each other when they're trying to mate or breed, because that's not a survival, all right? We want to focus in on surviving, as in how do they warn each other that there's a predator nearby, okay? How do they use communication in that way? All right, so yesterday, some of you actually got to the point where you chose a quote. When you have a text set like this, it is kind of important to always use that hook that's a quote. So today what I want to do is I want to walk you step by step through the process of writing your introduction. When I read your musical instruments essay that you just completed, one of the things I noticed is that a lot of you still don't understand how to write an introduction. So everybody's writing today. All right, go ahead and open your journal. Please put the date at the corner. Now, I asked you yesterday to pull a quote from your text set. Some of you were able to do that. Most of you chose 2 possible quotes. And so if you didn't get a chance to choose a quote yesterday, then you're going to choose one of these 2. Okay? The first one came from source 1 in the introduction. Some of you chose this to be your quote. Birds have different types of beaks. They use their beaks as tools for survival. Okay, and there again, there is that word survival. The other quote that some of you chose came from source 2. Birds are very intelligent animals. They know exactly where to go and what to do for survival. And again, we see that word survival. And I think that's one of the ways that some of you saw those sentences as popping up. So if you did not get a chance to choose a quote, you need to choose one of those for today's practice. Go ahead and underline it in your text set. Choose the one you want to use and underline it. Okay, so let's go ahead and start to write. Remember, when we write our introduction, we're going to indent. And a lot of you are still not doing this. Since we have had a whole 9 weeks where you've been talking about indenting and I have been modeling it, if you do not indent your paragraphs, you're going to lose behavior points. Everybody needs to start with a quotation mark. And now you're going to copy word for word what you underlined to use for your hook. When you come down to the second line, you're going to come all the way over to the red line. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, take a look up on the screen. If you need to stand up to see it, go ahead and do that. And guys, here's a little trick. Some of you have a lot of spelling words on your list, and you've been taking spelling tests every week. A lot of the words you're using in your essays are right there in the text set. And you can copy it right from the text. And if you do that, you won't end up with that word being on your spelling word list. So make sure, go back right now and take a look and make sure that you have copied the words exactly right. Now, Aliana, it's right there next to the chair behind Eliza. Ms. Bartlett moved it. So just put it right there. I know there's stuff in it. Put it right there, that blue basket, right there, on top of the little cart. There you go. I wasn't sure if you were done with this, so go ahead and check it and make sure you're done. If you're not done, we'll talk right now, okay? And then if you finish this, then take out your essay. The one on musical instruments. Okay. All right, so we can't just leave this quote hanging out in the front of the paragraph, okay? We have to kind of connect it somehow. And so now we're going to connect it. We are going to, first of all, cite it because our reader needs to know where it came from. So look up on the screen for me, please. And you're going to write this quote. Whoops, I'm spelling it wrong. After I just talked to you all about spelling, I'm spelling it wrong. Whoa, disappeared. It's called whiteout, and it's it's something that you can do to make especially if you've made a mistake in pen. It comes in quite handy. Okay, I have to let this dry, so I'm just going to skip for a second. This quote from, and then you're going to say what the source was. Okay? Now, you can say source 2, or you can put in quotation marks, migrating birds, because that's the title of the article. Okay? And that's what I want to do. I want to open the quote because the title of an article goes in quotes. And remember, guys, if you're not sure how to punctuate titles, you have a chart right in your packet. It's in your blue packet on how to punctuate titles. All right, I'm not hearing whoever's talking to me, so you need to, yes, ma'am. Well, I appreciate you pointing out my mistake. Okay. This quote from Migrating Birds, and then after you do that, because this is how you're citing, you're going to want to choose a verb. Is that done? All right, it's done. Put it in the basket, and then move on to musical. You want to choose a verb. You might want to say shows, or indicates, or highlights, or reveals. Okay? And your chart in your green packet gives you some choices that you can make. All right? So it gives you some choices that you can make in order to do this. So I'm going to choose the word highlights. Now, I'm going to make a statement, but I don't want to just repeat what is in this quote. I don't want to say this quote from Migrating Birds highlights that birds are very intelligent, right? Because I'm just repeating what's in the quote. I don't want to do that. All right? So, I'm going to make a statement. I'm going to say birds And notice how I'm punctuating this. Birds, there's more than one bird, but I'm going to talk about their behavior. So their behavior belongs to them. And this is the way that you punctuate a word that is both plural and possessive. So there are many birds, and the behavior belongs to the birds. I'm making a general statement. I'm trying to say this in a way that doesn't use that word survive because I know the next sentences are going to be filled with that word. So go ahead and finish your sentence. Remember, that's the sentence that is going to help you to explain why you chose that quote. You make a very deliberate choice of the quote that you're going to use, but you have to let your reader know what it is. So this is our hook right here. All right, notice it's 3 sentences long. Birds are very intelligent animals. They know exactly where to go and what to do for survival. This quote from Migrating Birds highlights that birds' behavior helps to keep them alive. Okay, now, when we created our plan for our essay, and I'll flip back to that so you can see it. When we did our plan, and we made our main ideas, we made them in order in which they appeared in the sources. So this was source 1, source 2, source 3. Well, because my quote is about migration, I need to lead with that. That needs to be the first main idea I talk about. If you chose the quote that came from the bird's beaks, then you're going to lead with that main idea. Okay? So your first main idea that you are going to talk about and that you have in your introduction needs to be connected to that quote. It needs to have some kind of a correlation to that quote. So for me, when I go to write my introduction, when I go to write my body paragraphs, when I go to write my conclusion, I am going to start with this one right here. Then I'll talk about this one, then I'll talk about this one. And I can go ahead and just put a number right on my plan. I don't have to erase it and reshift it. This just tells me which one to do first. Now, we've talked about this a lot, about how when we plan an essay, it is super, super important for us to write a complete sentence for our thesis, to write a complete sentence for each of our main ideas, because now the next step is easy. Now the next step is super, super easy. What we're going to do is we're going to write our main idea sentences. So go ahead and do that. I should see everyone's pencil moving. And notice when I get to the end of the first main idea, it's a period. It's not a comma. Remember on the rubric, the checklist, it says a sentence for each main idea, not a list of the main ideas connected with a comma. Elizabeth, I don't see your pencil moving. So if we had our checklist in front of us, we would now indent, hook the reader or engage the reader in 2 or 3 sentences, 1 sentence for each main idea. And then how does the introduction end? How does the introduction end? Who remembers? Natalie? With your thesis statement. So once I've written each of my 3 main ideas, I'm going to just go ahead and copy because I created a plan that has this. I'm going to copy the thesis statement. Jen, are you writing this down, babe? And if you followed me step by step, you have written your introduction. So hopefully by now you can see why it is so important for you to spend the time and the energy in creating a really good plan. It will save you time. The time you put in at the beginning is going to save you time when you go to write.